So can you just help me understand how markets should be looking at the U.S. presidential election?
Well, the markets are broadly ignoring it, I think, for two reasons. One, that they know pretty much what Biden's going to do. And two, as far as Trump is concerned, it is so unpredictable that the market's almost not focusing on it. And I think for possibly the right reason, because one of the themes that I argue in my book as well is the fact that if you look at Trump's previous track record, on some of the key issues in terms of what he said and what he did were so different. Like, you know, one of the big issues I have with capitalism today is the amount of regulation that this country faces. Trump promised that when he'd come to power, he'd bring down the regulatory state. Said for every for every regulation that I put into place, 2 regulations would go out. What was the track record? The track record was that in his 4 years, he put in as many regulations as Obama or Clinton before him, which is basically an average of 3,000 new regulations a year. So I think that is one of the fundamental problems of America today. The regulatory state has grown so much, such a complex tax code we have got. For every new regulation that you put in, you get thousands of pages of further clarification. And the other issue for America today, obviously, is the debt and deficits. Now, both these leaders don't have any plan to address that. And you have their key supporters who are telling them on both sides that debt and deficits don't really matter. People have been crying wolf on this for such a long period of time. We've had the clocks go up on Times Square. These things don't matter.
Well, that's the thing, is it feels like no matter who wins, 2 things might be the same. The fiscal deficit is going to continue to grow.
Yes.
And there's going to be harsh policies against China.
Yes.
Is that fair? Like, those are like constants no matter who's in the White House?
Yes, but I think that the deeper problem, as I said, is the fact that no one is addressing what the core issues are, that capitalism somewhere has gone off the rails. This is not the system that they had in mind. So, but you're completely correct that in terms of that, for people to get more economic freedom, to deal with the issues of inequality, I don't think any of this is going to be fundamentally addressed by either of the leaders, even though they sort of talk about it. Someone wants to put a billionaire tax. Someone wants to, do that. None of this is really practical. So I think that that's why the markets have been so oblivious almost of the political debate in America.
But it's just getting this sort of winding the knot even tighter. We talk about the rise of Trump back in 2015, 2016. He rode that wave of discontent with capitalism, or at least the current state of democracy and the way it was structured. Now, he may not have offered a solution for that, but people saw a solution in him. We saw a similar thing overseas in the UK and Brexit. Now we have another election coming up there next week. We saw a similar thing going on in Western Europe, and now we have another election happening in 2 weeks over there that are ostensibly not just about the men currently in office, but it's essentially about the previous 30, 40, 50 years of post-World War economic policies.
Absolutely. So that's correct. And I've traced that in the book, as you know, which is the fact that in the last 30 to 40 years, you've seen a secular decline in the approval ratings of leaders around the world, in the Western world in particular. So people are unhappy, and each leader who comes to office gets more and more unpopular, and the probability of the incumbent winning a re-election keeps going down. Like in places like America or much of the Western world, if you were the incumbent or the leader in office, the probability of you winning the next election was pretty high. I mean, at times 70, 80%. That probability has now come below 50%. So it's almost being in office is a disadvantage. And I think that that's why we're seeing so many leaders around the world be unpopular and so many of them lose election. And even that's why today, even though so many people say, oh, under Biden, the economy's done okay, it's growing at 2 to 3%. But most Americans still feel that the economy is moving in the wrong direction.
But what's the solution? I mean, you have a book saying what went wrong with capitalism, but to kind of quote one of my favorite sports analysts, someone says we need to replace this quarterback or that, the question is always with who? So it's easy to say capitalism might be flawed, maybe even broken. But is there something out there, a system out there that could replace it, that would address some of those issues?
No, but what I say in the book very clearly, Romain, is that capitalism did not fail, it was ruined. And what ruined capitalism over the last 30, 40 years is that it's become socialized risk. The risk has totally been socialized. And the people who are most advantaged by this system are typically the rich, which is that you have this culture of bailouts which has come into this country, where everyone thinks that they deserve a bailout. You have this incredible regulatory hegemony, and that is facilitated a lot in terms of by big businesses. Because, when you have regulation that come into place, who benefits? It's the entrenched, it's the big businesses, the big tech companies, they have their lobbyists. So they're the ones who benefit the most from this system.
And is that showing up in the numbers in terms of like new business? Because I've heard this narrative before that the incumbents now are so entrenched that it's actually tamped down new business creation.
Yes, if you look at the number of new startups, last 30 to 40 years in America, it's been declining. Now, after the pandemic, we saw a bit of an increase because there was an artificial closure of some businesses and some new openings. But generally, the trend in new startups in America has been a 30, 40-year decline. And in America today, the economic and social mobility is at record lows. So there's a feeling out here that there is not an equality of opportunity. See, under capitalism, there was always going to be inequality. But the inequality was supposed to be due to meritocracy. And that was okay by most people. Now there's a feeling that there is an inequality of opportunity because the entrenched and the existing people have such an advantage given the capitalist system being distorted today, that new businesses being created, the small and medium-sized businesses, they find it very difficult to thrive in this sort of environment, and the average employee feels suffocated. As a detail in the book, there are so many towns in America today dominated by just one company. And when it's dominated by one company, then the average person virtually has no bargaining power. And so these are some of the deep fundamental issues. And over the last 100 years, as I've said, progressively with each decade, these issues have got exacerbated.